Le Nouveau Apprentissage, the new learning, but then everything sounds better in French, doesn't it? It sounds even better in Italian, il nuovo insegnamento. And I'm riffing off, of course, the idea of la nouvelle cuisine, which was the revolution in the last century in terms of traditional French, heavy, sauce-laden French cuisine, which turned itself inside out to become much simpler with reduced cooking times, fresher, more local, and using new techniques, not afraid to embrace technology, individualized for dietary needs, and mashing things up in different ways to create new ideas. And that is, I think, what's happening in education. I'm talking here about post-secondary. I hope it translates for many of you from the K-12 system. This is in not any way scholarly or research-based like some others. It is entirely personal and idiosyncratic and therefore self-indulgent. The pitch is threefold. First of all, that we have siloed formal learning, institutionalized learning from, well, I believe life. Life is a natural, lifelong bodily function, and you can use whatever metaphor you like for that. Most of the important learning actually is informal, whether you're a parent, partner, pal with people and pets and pastimes. And one of the places this becomes very evident, certainly in hiring in post-secondary education, you make two piles of those with the formal stated qualifications and those without. And then, from then on, it's an informal evaluation, a subjective assessment of what people are about and what skills they have and what they bring to the job outside of that ticket that they have. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about personalized learning and digital portfolios in my somewhat amateurish way. There's a big discussion across higher education now about competencies, particularly in the US. They're much more open about this discussion. We're too polite in Canada. But there is a movement now away from the goal of just passing, but actually to master something, that the transcript isn't really the essence of somebody's record. It's going to be actually what they know and how they can demonstrate what they know, and it's transparent. Time is fixed. Learning is variable. That's what grades are all about. When in fact, this will move to students learning at their own pace and where learning is defined. So you're ready when you're ready, not when the semester ends. And there is a mismatch at KPU. We're obsessed with the 3-credit course and the 3-credit course curriculum, when in fact what we really should be talking about as competence is the defining unit. And there is a mismatch between higher education and workplace expectations. This is very widely discussed, both here in BC and all across the country. And there are actually competencies for success in the 21st century. This is the American Association of Colleges and Universities a few years ago, did a huge study with business and higher education and said, what do you really need to be successful? Well, it's not complicated. You need knowledge. You need to know stuff about people and about the physical and natural world. You need some intellectual and practical skills. You need personal and social responsibility. We often forget that one. And you also need, no matter how smart you are, if you can't tie things together and apply it, then you're not really ready for the 21st century. Well, I'm going to talk about me and why I am president of KPU. I'm going to talk about me then, me now, and me later, hopefully. I'm going to start with my father. I'm not going into ancient history, but I think you'll understand why. My father was too poor to stay in school. He passed the scholarship exams to Reading School several times. He couldn't go because to stay on at school after the legal age was foregone income. His family had to have the foregone. Although they always dressed up for the photographs. You notice that? They were dirt poor, except once. They must have borrowed the suits. But he left school. He became an apprentice gas fitter. He got married, and then World War II arrived. He joined the Royal Air Force. He was the flight engineer on a Halifax bomber, which got shot down, and he was in prisoner of war camp for 2 years. He studied there with educated people, educated men from the US, from France and from Britain, and they formed study groups and they helped each other. He got textbooks through the Red Cross, and he actually sat his high school matriculation exams there in the prisoner of war camp, except they got lost. When he got back home, he was liberated. He came back home and rewrote them, and he became a math teacher, a very good math teacher, and the rest of his career was spent teaching mathematics. He who can does, he who cannot teaches. That's what George Bernard Shaw said in Man and Superman. It's often quoted by those who can't do either. But my father set me up so that I didn't have to go through any of these troubles. I basically have been in school since the age of 5. That's 59 years for those of you who are counting. I've always been in education and without a break, and I've never had a real job, some would say. But I cruised through school, grammar school, University of London, and then Simon Fraser University, where I received my PhD in chemistry, of all things. I became an instructor at Fraser Valley College, and I hoped I did some outreach with the community. One thing led to another. I became an administrator. I don't quite know how that happened. That's partly why I'm talking here. I actually kind of see myself that way. Many others don't. Well, so eventually I became president of KPU. KPU is the 5th largest institution of higher education in BC. Its budget is $140 million consolidated, 20,000 learners total over the year, and 1,300 employees. It's a big institution spread over 4 campuses, soon to be 5. I am a poster child for informal learning because I actually have no training whatsoever for the job that I'm in, whether it's finance, HR, organizations, administration, higher education, and certainly not leadership. But here's what I do have. This is what I hope makes sense. I have a PhD, and any research graduate program gives you a whole bunch of transferable skills, how to deal with data, the discipline to translate a crazy idea into some kind of coherent investigation, to make sense of what seems to be unconnected information. And the rest, however, so those basic sort of intellectual skills were certainly very valuable, and I think I keep them alive. But the rest, of course, is informal. Teamwork I learned at school. You're on a team. If you could carry a rugby ball and not trip over, you were on the team. It was a very small school. I was in the Boy Scouts. I learned how to tie knots and also how to light a fire in the rain. And it was a very kind of Spartan Boy Scout troop. They kind of threw a backpack on you and sent you out in the wilderness for a couple of nights to see if you could survive. I think I learned something from that. Mainly how to get along with people in tough times. When I went to university in London, I met some very diverse and odd people. I then joined the theatre. When I wasn't in the chemistry lab, I was in the theatre, and I met some very diverse and odd creative people. And when I got to Simon Fraser, I joined the theatre and met some very diverse and very odd creative people. I went out to Chilliwack, where I got my first teaching job, and there I am in the theatre again. And they actually asked me once to write a play, and I wrote a few, and was privileged to be able to write and direct plays for young people, which became quite popular, and I'm very proud of that. I sometimes, this is not the silver screen, but you know, one of the glowing rectangles on television, Knowledge Network, commemorated the anniversary of Captain Vancouver, and there's Captain Vancouver bringing civilization to English Bay, as you can see. I was on the school board in Chilliwack for 13 years, handing out trophies to those who gave the best speech while having a broken arm. I learned so much on school board watching administrators, both good and bad, and I still have very, very fond memories of the experiences that I learned as a community member on the board, an elected member on the board, watching how administration could screw up and also achieve amazing things. I'm a dad. That's 3 of the 4 children that I know of. As a soccer coach, I can tell you, coaching young women, I actually until recently was coaching my daughters in the Metro Women's League. It's an extraordinary experience, and they were very successful. And I'm a buddy. Pete and Max sadly have passed on, but Charlie fills the void as best he can. And if you say that you can't learn anything from animals, I'll have to ask you to step outside. So that's me now. It's personal. There's a box of documents and photos. I can digitize those and flash them around like I'm doing now. There's professional. You can go and see my CV. It's got all the hyperlinks to many of my publications and some of my presentations. There's citation indexes behind that where you can kind of track my professional life. And then, of course, there is the complex digital identity. You can probably track me pretty well every day and every hour of the day, of where I am, what I'm doing, what I'm buying, etc. We're all subject to that. So that's me now. What about me later? Well, I'm going to move on to this idea of the personal learning environment and the digital portfolio, and I think they're the two ideas that kind of stick for me in terms of the future of higher education, at least. And I know that some of this work is going on in the K-12 sector. This is the personal learning environment, the schematic of the personal learning environment of Darcy Norman. He's at the University of Calgary. Very smart man, runs a wonderful blog. And this is how he mapped out how he does his work, how he interacts with people all around the world and in the local community in a digital environment. And there's all kinds of tools there. Many of them are free and easy and accessible, and that's how he portrays it. It's too complicated for me, I'll do my own. So I want to go from me now to me later, and I'm presuming me later is going to be better informed, I'm going to be more worldly, I'm going to be closer to my hopes and dreams, let's put it that way. How am I going to get there? Well, first of all, I want to talk to smart people, and I want to access the resources that smart people provide, and I'm going to browse, gather, organize, read, listen, and, of course, watch. And there are many ways to do this. There's all kinds of feeds that you can obtain either for free, like TEDx talks, or you can, for a small fee, you can access so many materials. And then there's all kinds of free or very inexpensive software to help you organize that and build your own personal archive and library and notes of everything that you have gleaned from that interaction. But that's really just the information. The fun part comes when you start connecting with people, collaborating with them, discussing, and you can do, of course, that on site in school or college, on campus, at work, in the community, or in the pub, or online. You can do it in many ways. Of course, that's what MOOCs are all around, drawing people together. You can engage in blog discussions. There's learning management systems. Almost every institution would have one of those where people can connect with each other in various ways. And wikis, of course, there's lots of ways that they can help generate discussion. There's some of the tools. I'm a bit old school. I'm probably way behind what's going on out there with all kinds of other apps and systems, but I just threw those in. I also, at some point, want to kind of start putting my own stuff out there. I want to create, share, and publish. Not terribly difficult. I don't have Instagram and other things on there, but I'm a bit behind the times. But you get the idea that it's not very difficult to actually set up a website, do your own blog, write your own blog, post your own pictures, post your own idea and your YouTube videos. And then I may want to actually seek feedback and validation and have in some ways all that learning that I've gained validated. And there's ways that you can do that and transfer it to university college credit. There is Thompson Rivers University Open Learning will help you do that. Learning Counts is a service in the US where you can submit a portfolio and they will assess it for a certain amount of credit. The American Council of Education, Mozilla does its badges, and some MOOC providers will give you, for a certain fee, will assess the learning that you've gained through the MOOCs that they've provided. So there we are. Hopefully I'm going to be closer to my dreams and goals. I'm going to be a lifelong learner with a rich e-portfolio, digital portfolio of all my learning, past and present, and available there for me to add my future learning. We use Mahara at KPU. It's linked to Moodle, and you put it all together. It's starting to look pretty interesting to impress somebody if you leave it lying around. But here's the key bit. Key bit is what's happening in the schools and in the colleges and the universities with respect to the instruction. And Le Nouveau Enseignement, we move to that. The new teaching is going to look much more like it used to do, I guess, in medieval times, or at Oxford and Cambridge, where you have individualized tutoring and you have people working with somebody who can guide them and motivate them and deal with all the issues around their learning and talk to them about what they want to learn and where they want to take their learning and help access all these resources and all these processes. So the role of the teacher and the role of the instructor or the professor is going to change, could change, but still be absolutely vital, as are the schools, as are the campuses. And it's not just for adults. A lot of this comes from my experience in adult learning. But if you look at Anya Kamenitz's TEDx talks or read her books, Do-It-Yourself University, you see where she's coming from as, on behalf of the millennials. Why do we have to go through these arduous processes of formal learning when in fact a lot can be done individually, and the institutions that can harness that are going to be very successful. KPU, we're developing a school for open studies or something like that. The name is tentative. But somebody can come, hopefully, to us with their formal learning, their experiential learning, that is, their informal, and also the documented learning, the kind of stuff you do on the side at night school, or continuing studies, or Microsoft certification, that kind of stuff. You put it all together, you have an assessment, and you develop a personalized degree plan that focuses on your interests and where you want to go, and then hopefully you'll stay on at CAPE, and once we've done that, you can stay on and do your degree completion through KPU, we hope, or somewhere else, doesn't matter. But you will also generate a learning portfolio, a digital portfolio of your learning, and you can have that for life. And as you go through life and you have the emergent learning, hopefully you're going to be a lifelong learner, you'll be able to update your digital portfolio, and there might be parts of it that are private and parts of it which are public, parts that you want to send to a future employer, etc. And of course the key point here, particularly for students at KPU, is the employment, and there will be a dimension of the learning portfolio that will be accessible to the employers. Increasingly, employers will want to see your portfolio, they don't want to see your resume. Thank you very much.